You were the villain, the monster in my head, but it was just my shadow screaming what I never said. I sharpened all my fury like a blade against your skin, but I was cutting pieces of myself from deep within. Wasn't you. It was my broken glass, protecting all the demons from a wounded past. I burned down bridges just to feel alive. The fire was mine, not the look in your eyes. I swore you were the trigger, the reason I was torn, but shadows only surface when the light is born. Every fight I started, every war I waged was a mirror in disguise with my soul on stage. It wasn't you, it was my fractured frame, hurling all my chaos and calling out your name. I wore my rage like a crown of thorns, but shadows only dance when the heart feels scorned. Now I see the truth in reflection. Every wound was my own confession. The anger fades when the mask falls down. I was shadow boxing with the ghost in town. It wasn't you, it was my haunted mind, throwing out projections that I thought were mine. Now I bow to the darkness, I forgive the flame. The shadow was my teacher and I'm not the same.
Hello, everybody. Hello, people who are listening live and people who are listening in the past. Hello, my name is Shaman Patrick. Welcome to this special live edition of the Shaman Patrick Show. That was a song that we made about a month ago. And it's about doing shadow work and realizing that the things you dislike in another person is actually something going on in yourself. So today we're going to talk about the reptilian agenda. And there's a 6-hour movie, and it's about where David Icke gets his information. And this 6-hour movie, it's called, here, let me show you on the screen. It's called, wait, hold on. Look at me. I'm already screwing up. I'm just a screw up. Okay, so Credo Mutwa interviewed by David Icke, The Reptilian Agenda. Let me put on my reading glasses. Okay, so you can tell I watched the Peacemaker show. Okay, so and already there's these reptilian disclaimers. So let's look at these reptilian disclaimers first. All right, so reptilian humanoids or anthropomorphic reptiles, also called reptoids, etc., appear in folklore, fiction, and conspiracy theories. In folklore, in South Asian and Southeast Asian mythology, Naga are semi-divine creatures which are half human and half snakes. Claims of sighting reptilian creatures occur in southern United States where swamps are common. In the late 1980s, there were hundreds of supposed sightings of a lizard man in Bishopville, South Carolina. And in fiction, anthropomorphic reptilian races or beings commonly appear in fantasy and science fiction. They can be based on various reptiles like lizards, crocodiles, alligators, snakes, dinosaurs, and the fictional dragons. I love how they say fictional dragons. Dragons are no more fictional than the dinosaurs. If I were to say, I would say there's more evidence for dragons than there are dinosaurs. But what do I know? I'm just a shaman. All right. So they are often depicted as powerful warriors, though their relative intelligence to humans varies, as with other anthropomorphic races. So I'm always curious, like, why does YouTube have to put this disclaimer below it? Like, if you're watching this right now, or if you want to leave it in the comments, do you believe that there are reptilians? Do you believe that there's a reptilian agenda? Do you believe that? Well, I'm going to tell you, I've actually had interactions with reptilians. I never really paid all that much to this stuff. But part of my initiation was I had to be aware and be made aware of various different spirits and alien races. And one of those races that I was made aware of were the reptilians. And this is a well-documented event in my life. I was featured on the Drunken Peasants podcast talking about my encounters with the reptilians. And to give you a basic gist of that is that they appeared to me kind of in a astral third eye space, and they just kind of regarded me and nodded towards me. They just acknowledged me. And that there was also some gray aliens there kind of calming me down. I like to calm people down. I might have inherited this skill through the gray aliens that I've worked with. I mean, hey, I'm a shaman. I'm going to talk about some freaky shit, y'all. I'm going to talk about some freaky shit. So, these grays were calming me down, and I was able to interact with these reptilians. They were in my space, but they weren't in my space. They were kind of out of phase, and some information was exchanged. And today I'm going to talk a little bit more about that information that was exchanged, because from what I understand, the reptilians have been kicked off the planet, that they have been kicked off, and that what we're seeing now is sort of a cleanup of, I guess you might want to say, minions. There's some things that have to continue to play out. But from what I understand, and I'm telling you, I don't know if this is true or not. It's from what I understand about everything that I've experienced, is that the reptilians had to be shown the destruction, that they had to be shown exactly what it would look like. And also that reptilians had to incarnate and participate in a human experience as part of this. So I'm going to leave that there for right now, but I'm going to talk about this documentary. I haven't seen this documentary, and I'm going to watch it with you guys. It's 6 hours. So depending on how this stream goes, I might continue it as a series. I don't know, but I do want to hear some of the things that Credo Mutwa says, a Zulu shaman. And David Icke got all his information from this shaman. I didn't know that. I thought David was getting this from something else. So let's get started and watching this documentary and seeing what's up. What's up? So let's go. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, and welcome to Africa, this enormous and astonishing continent. South Africa, to be more precise, just a short drive outside Johannesburg. And I'm here to talk to a remarkable man, Credo Mutwa. When I first came to South Africa about 18 months ago, within 2 or 3 days, I was introduced to Credo Mutwa. I'd never heard of him at the time, but from the moment I met him, I didn't stop listening and he didn't stop talking for at least 5 hours. And within the first few minutes, I realized I wasn't just in the presence here of a man of great knowledge, and he's certainly that. I was in the presence of a genius, a unique human being. And Credo Mutwa is without doubt the most incredible man it has been my honor to meet. Credo is what some people around the world call a shaman, and some deeply, deeply ignorant people call a witch doctor. And to give him his official title, he's a Sanusi in the Zulu nation. Sanusi is the carrier, the keeper of the ancient knowledge of so much, including the ancient knowledge of history of Africa, where all this came from, where the people came from, what the truth of history is, instead of the largely nonsensical version of history that we get through the universities and the schools from very, very well-educated professors who know. There are only 2 Sanusis left in South Africa. Credo is one. And that's terrifying, because it means the true version of the history of this continent is dying. It's being lost to this official nonsense that we're told is history, but is absolute garbage. History has been rewritten, and the people who can put that history together again are going out of this world as they age and are not replaced.
Yeah, y'all weren't supposed to hear that. I don't think y'all are supposed to hear that at all. So if you can read my lips, have fun. No, okay, I'll tell you what I said. I talked about the fact that I was a Namo, and that, I said earlier that reptilians were to incarnate here to get to hear what, or to feel what it's like to be a human. And the fact that I'm a Namo means that, there were prophecies that, said that Namo would incarnate as human beings. I'm not the only one. I've talked to other incarnated Namo, and I will tell you more about that. But for this particular stream, I really want to focus on what Credo has to say. And I have a feeling that he might unlock something for me. So this is an exploratory stream. We may learn a lot today, but let me go back to David, and I'll remember to unmute my microphone next time.
So you're about to have, as I have, the enormous privilege of hearing this man talk and seeing his knowledge preserved for as long as the electronic medium exists.
And let's re-preserve that knowledge. This is a 6-hour video. And like I said before, if you want me to continue making these live streams as a series, we'll see how today goes. But I think this is something really important that we all need to hear now.
He is the official storyteller and keeper of the history, the knowledge of the Zulu people. But you know, knowledge is a very dangerous thing when you're trying to hold people down into a mind prison. You're trying to manipulate them. You're trying to control them. And so people like Credo Mutwa, who have the knowledge to rewrite history and therefore rewrite the present, they are very dangerous people to those that wish to control and suppress. This man has had endless threats to his life, endless attempts on his life, right up to the last few days. And he has upset the hierarchy of his own people as much as he's upset those others in other cultures and other races that wish also to suppress the truth for reasons of preserving their own religious domination or keeping people in ignorance. And so I've come here to talk to Credo at length about many things. And this is a series of unique videos with a unique man. And what we're going to start out with is to concentrate on a bizarre story. An off-the-wall story, you would think, but one which he is confirming at every turn from his own background, his own unique knowledge of this continent. Over the last few years, as I've been trying to uncover how the world's controlled by a few people, which it is, and who those people are, it has emerged from my research that, bizarre as it may seem, a reptilian race from another world, interbred with humanity in the far ancient world, creating hybrid crossbreed bloodlines. You see references to these in the Old Testament and into endless of the ancient texts. In the Old Testament, it talks about the sons of God, which in the original is sons of the gods, plural, interbreeding with the daughters of men to create the hybrid race, the Nephilim. These gods were the literal gods of the ancient people. And they used to sacrifice people literally to the gods. And these crossbreed bloodlines, as ancient accounts tell around the world, were put into the positions of ruling royal power in the ancient world. And then, as is happening today, when you do the genealogy of the ruling families and the ruling positions of power in the world, be they the 42 presidents of the United States up to Bill Clinton, be they the British royal family, be the aristocracy of Europe, any of these key ruling elites, the top of the banking system, the top of the global business system, you hit the family lines which go back to these same ruling lines of the ancient world, royal lines, that the ancient accounts say were the crossbreeds between humanity and these reptilian gods. In other words, a reptilian extraterrestrial race has been controlling planet Earth for thousands of years to this day and putting its genetic compatible bloodlines into the positions of power as presidents, prime ministers, banking leaders, business leaders, etc. And this explains so many things. Where we get the divine right of kings from, the divine right to rule because of the bloodline, the genetics. Why these ruling families of the aristocracy and the royal families have always incessantly interbred with each other, just as the Eastern establishment families of the United States do, that produce so many presidents and banking leaders and administrators of government in the United States. And astonishingly, bizarre as I keep saying, and seemingly ridiculous as this story may be from our conditioned perspective of life and reality, when I started talking to Credo Mutwa from his African experience and knowledge of the most staggering depths and variety. He tells exactly the same story that I have uncovered around the world, exactly in great detail. And if Africa and the world is ever going to be free, and we are, then they have to listen to this man. And they have to listen now.
So Natalie asked, when was this documentary made? I can't find the exact date, but maybe it's in but he referenced Bill Clinton. He referenced Bill Clinton, so I'm going to say maybe in the 90s, like 93, 94, maybe. While we're watching it, I'll go and look it up. But what's interesting to me is that I do see like some power structures have somewhat fallen. You know, watching this documentary 30 years on, maybe 30 years later, like the world is a lot different than it was back then. And, you know, we've seen some of those power structures seem kind of desperate to hold on, you know, and from what I understand is that that there has been enough consciousness that has come into this planet that these power structures are just can't exist anymore. They just can't, because you have to be in a certain frequency or a certain vibration to be controlled. Also, a lot more people have woken up to the machinations of ego. And really the only way that you can be controlled is through the ego. The only way that a spirit could get to you, or even a reptilian, if you want to say that, could get to you, is if you have an intact ego. And in fact, I might propose this, that the ego is a necessary part of human evolution. Where did that ego come from? You know, if other alien civilizations had to deal with the ego, was the ego part of this hybridization that happened? I don't think any of it is wrong. I don't think any of it is bad. I don't look at it and go, well, probably because I'm an alien too. But at the same time, I'm like, it's just something that happens. All alien civilizations had to deal with this to become technologically advanced. I'm not necessarily looking at this as if it was something that was bad. I'm looking at it as a necessary part of evolution. Natalie says, and camera phones catching their mask slipping. Absolutely. And I also know this, that even though there were some reptilians that thank you, spirits, most reptilians wanted to enslave humanity. There were some who said, hold up, wait a minute. These people are something different. There's something different about them, something unexpected. And so there are, I would say, good ones. And I'm not going to reveal some things in this, but I'm going to go along with some of the things that David is talking about. I don't see anything wrong. I see everything happening exactly the way that it should.
I started out by talking to Credo about the origin of the knowledge that he is about to share with us for the first time in so many cases. Because this is the knowledge that only initiates normally get. But as Credo says, the world needs to know this. And so, this is a unique video. And this is a unique man.
That's weird, because he said this is knowledge that only initiates get. And so during my shamanic initiation, I was given some things about reptilians and aliens and other things too. I want to see, this is the thing, like whenever I'm listening to Shaman Durek and Shaman Durek talks about some of the things that he was revealed, and I'm like, I thought, Shaman Durek, you stole my story. But this is going to be interesting for me. And I hope it's interesting for you guys as well.
And like I say, I asked him first about the origin of the knowledge that he's about to pass on.
When the white man started destroying our religion, when he started demonizing our gods, when he started ridiculing what we believed in and actually using educated Africans to destroy that ancient African religion, in many parts of Africa, say, our ancient religion went underground. And there were, call them secret societies, all over South Africa and Central Africa and East Africa and West Africa, where this knowledge was stored and kept by aging guardians, many of whom did not know that in other parts of the land there were other guardians who were doing exactly as they were doing. Now, when I first became a Sangoma, I was already, say, a person of education. I had entered school as a child of 14 years, and when I became a Sangoma, I was a youth of 16 years. And what my aunt and my grandfather, as well as my maternal grandmother, taught me, shook me to the core of my soul. I found that the mission schools had been teaching me lies about my people all along. Missionaries had told us as children that the only light came to Africa with white people, that before the white man came, we black people had no idea about God. We had no belief in a life after death, and that our people were just a race of savages.
And I want to say this, you know, the fact that there are shamans awakening in America is evidence. You know, I'm gonna say I know that Christianity is kind of a virus to eradicate shamanism and ancient religions and ancient spiritual practices. I know this. This is interesting because I was raised in Catholic school. I was brought up in Catholic school, and you know, when I was initiated as a shaman, a lot of this stuff became clear to me. Like it was, oh, this was created by, I might even say Catholicism itself, very reptilian, very dark. And because I was raised in it, I learned all about it. I knew all about it. And so, but now when I look at how Christianity just sort of ran through ancient spiritualities and almost to destroy shamanism, this knowledge that we talk about on this channel, you know, of course there's going to be more shamans and the eradication of shamans over time in history and the making fun. And I noticed that even when I was in that mental institution, I was surrounded by shamans. I was surrounded by people in various stages of awakening. The fact that I got through that at all is a miracle. And some very ancient gods were looking out for me. I know that. I know that to be sure. And hearing him, it really does kind of humble me and realize that every shaman that's in America right now is connected to things that are so ancient and so just natural. And I think it's interesting that the signs of a spiritual awakening are the same as a mental illness. And I don't think there is mental illness at this point. I've seen too much. I think they found a place to lock up all the shamans. And when people used to say, well, Patrick, where are all the shamans in America? I said, because they're locked in mental institutions. They're drug addicts. They're lost. And I do believe there is a resurgence of shamanism happening around the world, because it is the world's oldest spiritual practice. And do you think that just in the past few hundred years that it could have, the light could have darkened completely? He talks about the white man coming to Africa and telling them they had no conception of God. And man, that must have been really rough to deal with.
Used to lie around in the sun, womanize, fight, and drink beer every day. I was suddenly awakened to the fact that Africans had in fact been far greater intellectually than the missionaries were willing to give them credit for. That, like the white man, we had astrology, astronomy, we had surgery. In fact, I found that Zulu surgeons in the early years of the 19th century and the 18th century and even beyond could perform operations which white surgeons were not capable of operating. And the more I learned about my peoples, the more I wanted to learn. And when my initiation under my aunt Mina and my grandfather Zigo had ended, I wanted to know more and more and more. And sometimes I had to pay a ghastly price in order to gain this knowledge. In one place, here in the northwestern Transvaal, my teachers found that I was really uncircumcised. And they told me bluntly that if I wanted to be a member of this secret society, I had to undergo circumcision. And I did, and it was screamingly painful, I assure you, because it was done with a clasp knife, which somebody must have blunted a little bit, just to make sure that I got the message.
Well, I had the same done, but I was asleep at the time, so we have that in common.
And say, in some places in Southern Africa, if you wanted to learn the secrets of a certain secret society, you had to do dreadful things which I cannot repeat here. And at one time, in Barotse land, in the west of what is today Zambia, my teacher said, look, how far are you willing to go in order to become one of us? I said, I am willing to go anywhere. He looked at me and he said, listen, educated man, we are tired of people like you. White men come amongst us to milk our minds and then to kill us. We want to be sure that we can trust you. And wait, sir. I said, great one, I am willing to do anything. He said, are you? I said, yes. And then And then they went into a graveyard, and from there they removed the hand of a corpse, dead 2 days, and they brought it and they challenged me to cook it and eat it. I did so. And these were the peoples who first told me about a race of highly intelligent beings which they called the Chidawi, the talkers, a race of creatures which look like reptiles, who have ruled the world for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Now, Natalie, this is really good. I'm glad for this. Natalie says, I had a boss who once told me, don't let the reptile brain take control. Talking about what I now recognize as ego, I've never drawn that connection until now. Wow. Very, very good. I've always wondered when they talk about reptilians, are they talking about, beings that are real in their egos, really in their egos. And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That in order to control people, we're going to get somewhere today, honey. In order to control people, they have to have an ego. That they have to have an ego. You can't control people without an ego. You can't do that. So the thing that keeps, if you're worried about being controlled, work through that ego stuff. You would want to work on your ego issues, because you can't think for yourself if you've still got an ego. And those people that fight me like, Patrick, we need an ego. Why wouldn't you want to know the thing that controls you? Why wouldn't you want to wake up to that? If you knew that you had on a shock collar, wouldn't you want to remove that shock collar? Wouldn't you just want to remove that? Isn't it weird how like all of you who've had that ego break in you, didn't it feel like you were going to die without it? Didn't it feel like you were going to die through it? How do you remove an integral part of your functioning like that? For those of you who are able to hear this today, you might make plenty of connections with that. It is like removing a piece of technology, something that you thought was vital, and it turns out to not be vital at all. And I truly, truly feel that the time is up on this stuff. That the reptilians, it can't go on too much longer. That it just can't go on, because it's self-destructive. Because, we say on our book cover, the ego is the greatest threat to humanity. Either humanity's going to survive or the ego is. And that's how it is. But I also know that the ego is a necessary part of evolution. You can't evolve without it. It's fascinating, isn't it? But for those of you who've had the ego break in you, didn't it feel like you're like you're just pulling this parasite out of you? It's like, so thank you for bringing that up, Natalie. So now Credo is talking about the race who have been ruling for hundreds or thousands of years, not since the dawn of time. And I'm making a comparison. Merrick and I have said it seems that the human ego really became prominent with the rise of Christianity. The ego either got an infusion or an injection a couple thousand years ago, because then we start seeing maybe even before then, because think about when we started being able to write and human civilization started developing even more. Human civilization would not have developed without an ego. It wouldn't have, but it's no longer necessary. The ego is going to get us to a certain point. So if they have been ruling for hundreds or thousands of years, it's also a necessary part as well to get us to where we are today. We wouldn't be where we are today without the ego. That's why I don't demonize it. I don't demonize it at all. I'm like, hey, much in the same way that I don't demonize a wasp or an ant or a rabid wolf. These things just are.
Through this dreadful act, I was able to gain knowledge which was denied to even the highest Sangomas, because they would not go through the ritual I went through. This is how secret knowledge is protected in Africa. And at one time, let me tell you another thing. Again, in Barotse land, on the border between Angola and North Rhodesia, as it was called, I was brought into a hut. And in the hut was a young woman. She was as black as ebony, and her hair was like a huge black cloud on her head. Her teeth had been sharpened in the Barotse fashion until they looked like those of a reptile. And Mutwa was very puzzled. What's this lady doing here? I'm supposed to spend several nights in this hut, so what is she? What is she doing here? Now, Credo Mutwa, being a frightened Zulu, afraid of women but not afraid of wild animals, decided to sleep with his back to the wall, giving the lady a nice clean bed. And on the following day, Credo Mutwa was fined 15 pounds by the local chief because I had refused a sacred gift. I had been supposed to do something very amazing to this lady to show that I was one of the people. That's luck. But
why, Credo, have you chosen to reveal this knowledge now to a much, much wider audience?
Mr. David, please, Africa is dying. Africa, is being murdered. And we are sitting like bloody fools. And we don't realize what's been done to our people. Sir, I have proof that can stand in any true court of law that the disease called AIDS is a man-made disease. And this disease is going to kill 3/4 of South Africa's black people within the next 10 years.
That's interesting to me, because AIDS killed a lot of gay guys and a lot of Africans. And I know that gay men come pre-built with some spiritual stuff. I know that gay men come pre-installed. That's what makes them gay. You see? That's what makes them gay. All gay men have this spiritual technology in them. That's what makes them gay. I told you some stuff is going to come out today that might sound revelatory, but the spiritual technology that's in them is what makes them gay. I mean, wanting to have sex with other men might just be a side effect, you see, of this stuff. So that's interesting that I too know that HIV is a man-made disease. So why did this man-made disease kill primarily gay men and Africans? Isn't that bizarre? Isn't that weird? I mean, it killed some other people too, but it seemed kind of targeted to specific communities. It doesn't kill gay men anymore. Doesn't really have to kill people anymore. But at the time of this documentary, yeah, there wasn't any medications or cures for it. And now they have PrEP, which I think is another pill designed to temper the natural spirituality that gay men possess. And I know this because I am a gay man, and I know lots of other gay men. And we are programmed to want drugs and sex and drinking and partying, not being priests, monks, spiritual leaders, because that's what gay men and women are set up to do, is to be the priests, the monks, and the nuns and the spiritual leaders of the tribe. But in modern age, gay men are programmed to fuck and fight and party and numb to their spiritual gifts.
There are wars in Africa which make no sense to me as a black man. Please, when people fight a war, Mr. David, why do they fight? People fight in order to get rid of something that is giving them pain. Whether that something is a tribal chief or a corrupt modern government. They want to fight to remove this burden or to be destroyed by it. That is the idea behind a rebellion. But in Africa we find wars where a group of rebels challenges a government and tries to fight against it. And then these wars end in the total destruction of that particular country, where neither the rebels nor the government wins anymore. And why? Because you find this force of rebels facing the government, and all of a sudden the rebel army splits into little factions which start fighting each other and not the real enemy, and soon it becomes a situation where everybody is fighting everybody else and the whole thing is getting nowhere. I say that these wars which are destroying Africa this way are orchestrated by forces from outside Africa. Our people need development. Our people need peace in Africa. We are basically a peaceful people. We are not warlike. Don't let historians tell you a lot of rubbish. Africa is not perceived by the people outside her as she really is. One, my people are Zulus, as a tribe famous for warrior exploits for many, many years now. But wait, do you know, sir, that Zulu people actually hated war?
And isn't it interesting that what's going on in America right now is all of this fighting amongst each other, being separated into individual tribes and ideologies and, political beliefs, getting the races to fight each other, getting religions to fight each other, and all. Isn't that interesting? Now I'm gonna propose something. if the ego is natural and it's a natural part of evolution, not just for humans, but for all alien or let's say any physical being with advanced consciousness, that it's a necessary part of it. Do you think that maybe something might have been keeping it going longer than it was necessary in humanity? Is something keeping it alive longer? There could be some human beings. Like I know that human beings are a unique species. I know this. And is there some sort of faculty within humanity where it's getting kind of hung up, that it should have been a rather short thing, this human ego, and that maybe something is keeping it around longer artificially? I'm going to propose that, because it doesn't seem normal, or it doesn't seem natural. It seems artificial. This ego, the way that the ego is continuing to be propped up and worshipped and celebrated and fighting and all these divisions. Or maybe that's what's supposed to happen for the final breaking point of it. Because in order for the ego to break, you have to experience a lot of suffering. There has to be a whole lot of suffering. And usually that's the only thing that'll break the ego. So what happened in Africa and what is happening in America have parallels. They surely do. We're not a warring people here in America either. These things are artificially inflamed, because humans left to their own devices, especially in America, we'd all be getting along with each other. We wouldn't be fighting each other, because the stuff that people are fighting about is not even real or true anyway. It's all made up. And so when you know that people are fighting amongst each other for made up reasons, who's keeping that shit alive?
And didn't love it, as historians would have you believe. We Zulu people call war impi, I-M-P-I, and we call evil imbi or ububi. Now the word impi and the word imbi come from exactly the same root, which means that which is evil. We call copper itusi, which means the helper, the frightener away of evil spirits. But we call iron insimbi, which means the evil metal, the metal of war. Now, when a Zulu went to battle, he spiritually prepared himself for fighting. But when he came back from battle, a Zulu would undergo a ceremony of purification, a very, very painful ritual, which lasted for some 7 days before he was even allowed to touch his wife. But wait for this. In England, we have got the Lady Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, writing in her diary that her husband, Sir John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, after the terrible battle of Blenheim, had made love to her 3 times while still wearing his top boots. Wait, sir. Listen to that. Here is a man coming into his tent or whatever it was, with his boots still stinking with the blood of horses and the blood of men, and probably with human flesh still attached to the soles of those boots. Here is this man making love to his wife. What kind of attitude is that? that a man would come smelling of death and destruction to desecrate his wife in 3 torrid sessions?
What sounds more uncivilized to you? Like, really think about that. That sounds really uncivilized, doesn't it? To have killed a bunch of people and with their blood and flesh and already on you, to then have sex with your wife. That sounds really uncivilized and kind of gross. And yet they thought they were the civilized ones, bringing civilization to these Africans. Isn't that wild to think about? Because I've known some Africans, and there was a in the 80s and the 90s, they were talking about how the poor, starving people in Africa, they just need civilization. They just need these things. And he told me, he goes, "Oh, Africa's fine. Africa was fine before the white people, and they'll be fine after the white people. There's so much abundance in Africa. Africa is fine. The only problems that ever occur in Africa is when people try to bring civilization to Africa. It makes it worse. It makes it way worse." And I've never forgotten him telling me that, because what looks civilized to people in the West? What looks civilized? Violence, war. That looks civilized. I'm not criticizing the West at all, but I think it's really kind of arrogant to think that a way of life, and I know America has gotten in trouble for this before, deposing dictators and messing with the politics of other countries and stuff like that. What works for Western people won't work for Africans, and vice versa. And this is fascinating to hear from him. Yeah, very civilized people.
We never did that in Africa. We hated war. And furthermore, our people, the black people of Southern Africa, are accused of having been a male-dominated society. Absolute bloody poppycocks. Zulus were a female-dominated society. And if you want proof of that, ask yourself, who killed King Shaka? Who planned Shaka's murder? 2 women, twins, Mama and Mkabai, Shaka's aunts. Who was the greatest advisor of King Shaka? His mother, Nandi. She used to plan every one of Shaka's military campaigns, right down to the last detail. So, everywhere in South Africa, our word for great also means female, but that is something we shall discuss at another time. So, Africa is being murdered, and a race of people which once founded some of the world's greatest civilizations is being cruelly exterminated, and our politicians appear to be hypnotized as like a little antelope hypnotized by a python.
And I will bring up this, a lot of people want to blame white people for enslaving Africans. That's not true. Especially in the early days, and this is what I know to be true, that white men could not go really into Africa. There were too many diseases that would have killed them to go into Africa. So they sold each other. They sold each other to the white man, and it wasn't what you're told necessarily about that. And were they encouraged by the white men to do that? Probably, but it's really disgusting that it ever happened at all. Luna Jane Parker said, "Did he say he cooked and ate a hand?" Yes, he did. that it was part of his initiation to eat a hand of a corpse. I didn't have anything like that as part of my initiation, but I did receive. There were weird rituals that I had to participate in, and I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to say that I had some weird visits, and I had some weird people kind of take me under their wing and help me with some things. A lot of them sexual rituals, and that's the reason why I won't talk about them. A lot of things that, nothing with children, don't get that twisted, but it was with other grown men and women as well. And it was very ritualistic. So, and I'm not going to talk about that. And I hope you respect that.
Leaders know what is going on in Africa. I'm going to talk, sir. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to reveal and damn the consequences. I am not a brave man, but it's high time somebody stood up and exposed the conspiracy around Africa and her people.
So let's start looking then at the force that is the common theme through all this history to the present day that's been manipulating these highly malevolent, highly destructive situations. My own research around the world has certainly focused in on the fact that there is a force, not of this world, shall we say, that is the common theme. What is your experience and your knowledge of an extraterrestrial involvement in the history of Africa?
Natalie says, I ate a bug, but no people or corpses, thank God. I didn't have to eat any people. I didn't have to do that. And, you know, when I talk about the things that I had to go through, it was very, like, kind of informal, kind of like guided by spirits, but also maybe spirits were using these people to help me. And I also had people bringing me drugs. That's another weird thing. Like, people would just give me drugs to take. Some of them were very strange and had very strange effects on me, including I would say that the home invasion I was a part of was almost like a ritual. There were weird drugs involved in that as well that weren't what they said they were. I think my home invasion was more of a kind of a final shamanic thing. There are secret shaman societies. There are. And I've heard other shamans talk about this, that, you know, there are spiritual things that we assist each other. We help each other. And it's not that big of a deal or all that secret, but it's weird how I became a shaman. It is very strange, all the things that happened around me. And when I hear other shamans talk about stuff, it's like, yeah, that sounds right. I feel like he's telling me so. There's some reason why I wanted to watch this video. I wasn't looking for it. I was at the gym, and then I was asking for a little bit of direction. I don't know why I was asking. I usually ask for that kind of stuff. And then this video came across my feed. So it's time for me to hear this stuff, and maybe it's time for you to hear this stuff as well. And I'm not so sure that the shamans that helped me out really want me talking about it all that much. You know, I might talk about it to people in person, but it's just something we shouldn't talk about. And I think that I was kind of since I had a YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff, people knew, like, I was going to tell some shit unless I learned to chill myself out.
One of the most secret stories that was revealed to me, sir, is about these beings. This story was revealed to me first in Barotseland, then in the country today called Rwanda. once known as Rwanda Urundi. Then I learned about this story at that time on the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is the story, a story you find throughout Africa. There was once a time when the blue sky was invisible, when the whole world was covered with mist, when you could not see the sun as it is now. You only saw it as a splash of white light moving slowly across the sky. At that time, there was an eternal drizzle every day of the year. At that time, people could not see the stars. People only saw the trees growing, trees which were very, very big. There was no desert at that time, only jungle everywhere where you went. At that time, say, people were what we call in Zulu, ngubili. A human being was both male and female in one body. And out of the sky, one day, came terrible objects. They were like gigantic bows made of huge gleaming gold. They were shaped like bows without strings, and they were bigger than the biggest mountains. They came out of the sky bringing great noise, black smoke, and fire with them. And out of those huge objects came them. At that time, sir, human beings could not speak. We had no gift of language at that time.
Natalie, are you starting to cure some ego stuff? You know, they were not male or female. They couldn't speak. Interesting, huh?
And people had, however, great mental power. A man would go into the bush and, using the power of his mind, actually call out an animal which he wanted to hunt and kill for his children. And the animal would appear and kneel down before the man, and the man would kill the animal and take it home. But when the Chidawi arrived in Africa, they told our people that they were gods and that they were going to give us human beings great gifts on one condition. We had to worship them and accept them as our creators. Some told our people that they were our elder brothers and that this earth had produced them generations ago. And they said they had come back to the green womb of their mother and that they were going to make us into gods. What they did, they created a very strange pair of caves in the land. They dug 2 caves. In one cave was a green light, in another cave was a red light. And they drove human beings into these caves. And each human being had to choose which cave the human being wanted to go into. And those who went into the green cave came out as women. And those who went into the red cave came out as men. And then the talkers, the Chidawi, told our people that now they were perfect. But the moment the first men saw the first women, a terrible row erupted. The women hated the men because they looked between their legs and they saw what they thought were snakes dangling between the legs of the men. And the men hated the women because they looked on their chests and they saw these big things. What they were, they did not know. And then the Chidawi laughed. It was to them a very, very big joke. And then the Chidawi said, if you serve us, you wretched little human beings, we are going to make you into gods. And the human beings agreed to serve the Chidawi. And the Chidawi gave human beings a second gift, the gift of language.
Interesting how this has a parallel to the Christian mythology as well, about how there was a snake and, you know, the penis looking like a snake, and I'm just making a little, like, some connections here, and the gift of knowledge, that could be considered the ego, you know, the separation, like noticing the differences in that here is this gift of knowledge, which I'm going to look back from here where I am now. I can look back at maybe that was the birth of the ego, that these sky beings came to give them this ego, and that they were once like us. And there's some really interesting things going on here, isn't there? Hello, Holly. Welcome. So I'm going to go for about 45 minutes, but we're about 34 minutes into this documentary. Would you like me to do this every Saturday? Let's peep in. I think to go too long on this stuff would be kind of hard, but depending on how this goes, I'm definitely enjoying this, and maybe doing it every Saturday would be fun, I think.
People started talking with their tongues where they had talked with their minds before. And there was a big rubbish starting again, because this man did not know the language of that man. And when this man greeted that man, this man thought that he was being insulted, and so a lot of murder and culpable homicide started taking place all over the world. When our people were given language, they found to their horror that they had lost much of their mental powers. They had paid a terrible price. But the Chidawi were now the masters of human beings. They made them, the human beings, to go into holes in the ground and to mine metal, gold, copper, tin, all kinds of metal. The Chidawi forced our people to mine. And the people were very unhappy because they couldn't cope with the new sexual differences which were there now between men and women. And then, from amongst the Chidawi came a very good female Chidawi. Her name was Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo. Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo was the senior wife of the terrible chief of the Chidawi, Umbaba Gorontwari Samahongo. She was sorry for human beings, this great reptile lady. She said to the poor people, "Ow, you are unhappy And the people said, yes, great one. We go into the holes every day, we dig the stones and we bring it to the gods. But we are not happy. And my Zarantwari scratched her scaly chin and began to think and to think. She was terribly ugly. Her eyes were awful, like lights in the darkness. But she had mercy in her heart. And she taught the men and the women how to make love. And she said, look, we divided you into males and females. Now this action is going to bring you together. But it did not, because anyone who receives a gift from the Ntwari, the children of the python, is always in trouble. What happened was that when one guy slept with his wife, he didn't find her much, so he went to steal another guy's wife, and there was a big remorse, as we say in Afrikaans, starting. So men started stealing each other's wives and each other's girlfriends, and women started stealing each other's husbands, and there was a big nonsense in the land. And King Umbaba, the terrible lord of the Ntwari, the reptile people, said, look what you've done, you stupid old woman. Now these people, they are making such a noise. Listen to all that screaming in the bush. They are busy making love there, and our gold is not being dug, and you are responsible for this. Zarantwari thought and thought and thought and thought, and then she got a plan. And she said, I will make them stop. When they make love to each other, the female is going to get pregnant. And when she is pregnant, the male is going to leave her alone. And that noise in the bush will not be so disturbing to you, my lord. And Umbaba said, you had better. There is no production yet. And so all the women in the world was pregnant. And Umbaba was furious with his wife. And so it went on and on until one day Zarantwari activated a black hero called Mweru. And Mweru challenged the great chief of the serpent people to a fight. And he cut off the royal penis of the king of the snake people. And that caused a big war. Mweru ran away, but Umbaba, the terrible chief of the people, caught him and arrested him and brought him to his village. And there, the great chief Korontwari Umbaba said, look, you cut off my thing, and I have replaced it with one made of gold, and I can't make love to my wife anymore. You think too much, you wretched little human being. Now Umbaba had a terrible nail in one of his hands, a claw. And with this claw, he drove the claw into poor Mweru's nostril, making a terrible hole into his brain, and he started drinking Mweru's brain, and then he threw away the corpse. To this day, we believe that the people, the Chidawi people, they eat human brains. And strangely enough, scientists have found skulls where the human brain has been removed and eaten by someone or something.
Well, the
So that's quite a tale, what I've been through. I would say that there's a lot of truth in that. You know, aliens visiting ancient peoples and then transforming them into making them different. So let's think about this. You know, you have animals. Animals obviously reproduce and have sex. And do they know they're having sex? Do they know they're mating? Do animals know that they're male or female? Do they know that? Or is it just, this is what they do? And so maybe going into those caves made them realize that they were male and female. Maybe not, magically giving them penises or vaginas or boobs, but making them see, kind of like in the Bible, it says that Adam and Eve realized they were naked, and the installation, which I'm going to say like an installation of the ego and their psyche. So now they could see divisions. Now they could see separations. They could see, and also that they started fighting and getting jealous and all that stuff. Sounds a lot like ego shit to me. And whatever animals were on the planet at that time, you could have given cats the ego, essentially. You could have given any of the beings that were on the planet at that time, giving them the ego. But maybe what's good for reptilians may not be good for humans. It sounds experimental, doesn't it? Maybe it was an unauthorized thing as well. But I'm just spitballing here. I'm just hearing some things and then providing my own spin on it. But it is an interesting story that is similar to the Bible and other creation stories if we're gonna go there. But I just kind of want to focus on, since he brought up Christianity and the white man early, I do want to just focus on that.
Hearing you speak here, so many things come to mind. First of all, you're saying that telepathy was the key form of communication before the Chidawi, the reptilians came.
Yes.
And I guess it's like a muscle. When you use it, it gets more sensitive and more powerful. So the more you use your telepathy, the more powerful your mind got. And
also, I do know that when the ego recedes, you do start to get things like telepathy, and you do start to be able to somewhat manipulate. You do get paranormal powers the more the ego recedes. So it does make sense why the ego would kill that ability that we all have. It's an ability that we all have, that you gotta dismantle that ego to get that.
When language came, it almost brought us into this three-dimensional world and disconnected us from that mind power that we have.
Yes.
And it's also interesting that the story that you talk about, the language being given, and then the different languages being given. And of course, that turns up in the Old Testament, in the Bible. It turns up in stories all over the world about the fact that we were divided by language, so we couldn't communicate. And as someone who publishes books, I know today how difficult it is to communicate through books when you've got endless different languages. So it's been a brilliant form of control for a long time.
Yes, sir. Even now here in South Africa, today, sir, black people prefer to speak to each other in English if they belong to different tribes. And they have even, over the many decades, black youths have even created a lingua franca of their own, which we call Tsotsi language, which is a mixture of African words and Afrikaans words. They do this in order to bridge the incredible language gap which exists between black people in South Africa. Let me show you an amusing thing, how different languages are. The language of the Xhosa people of the Eastern Cape is very similar to Zulu, but certain important words in the Zulu language, good words, are viewed as obscenities by the Xhosa people. For example, in the language of the Zulus, an ancestral spirit is called Idlozi. But if you use that word to a Xhosa, he says you are using a dirty word because to them, idlozi means sexual desire. And in the language of the Zulus, mili meal, maize meal, is known as impupu. But in the language of the Bapedis, maize meal is called bupi, and if a Zulu uses the word impupu in front of a Bapedi woman, she feels that he has insulted her, because in the Bapedi language, impupu means a woman's sexual organ. And in the language of the Mashonas, in the language of the Zulus, a mother is called mama. If I say my mother, I say mama wami. But in the language of the Mashona, the people of Eastern Zimbabwe, the word mama means to sit down and have a crack. So one day when I said to my Mashona host, Ngikumbule umama, which in Zulu is, I remember my mother, I'm missing my mother, the Mashona gentleman immediately took me and directed me to his pit latrine at the back of his house. Because in the Mashona way, mother is mine, not mine. So you see this terrible difficulty.
All that confusion. So confusing. Let me go back to this.
This subtle problem of language is a very big obstacle to communication in Africa. So we designed languages. There's another language called Fanagalo, which is a lingua franca consisting of African words as well as nonsense words and Zulu words, which was used a lot in the mines in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So, to bridge this great language gap, we have created artificial languages in Africa, but today English is the preferred language of communication. Some say we should learn French, also another language of communication in Africa.
Some of the problems of language can be funny, but it is the same situation, the divide and rule, that is actually in other expressions created this tremendous turmoil in Africa and other places in the world. And we're looking from my research, and staggeringly hearing you talk, you're saying exactly the same as I've come across. It's incredible confirmation that a reptilian race from another world has been behind the manipulation of humanity for a very, very long time. Now, what do these Chidawi actually look like, the reptiles?
I'm not a good artist,
You're better than me, that's for sure.
but this is how we believe the Chidawi look like.
And so, referencing the reptilians that visited me, they did look a lot like that. Like, I remember one of them had a really long tongue and they all looked different, but the same. They made fun of me on the Drunken Peasants for saying that I sounded kind of racist because they all look the same to me. But they did look just like that. And I'm going to tell you, I was not interested in this shit at all. I thought it was wackadoo. I thought it was crazy. So they did look a lot like that. It's like humanoid faces and stuff, but they did look exactly like that. They did a lot like that. It was freaky to me. I remember, talking about it at the time that it was going on. And somebody said that, you know, they didn't eat you or kill you, or why didn't they do that? Well, I don't know. But usually when they appear to people like that, I've heard that they kill them or they eat them or something. And I'm still decoding why they came to me in that way. But also I had an initiation as a shaman, and maybe he will talk. Maybe they have appeared to him and talked and communicated with him. As I said, some information was exchanged, but I'm still decoding that. It is a little overwhelming. All right?
They were created in this. You see, sir, you white people say that there are alien beings on this earth. No, you are wrong. The earth in which we live has produced 24 different races during its long existence. Please, this is how a Chidawi looks like. It stands about 11 feet high. It is a very slender being which seems not to have a bone structure. Its fingers have no joints. They are more as if the bones in here were flexible. Some of the Chidawi have got 3 claws with a thumb. Some have got 6 claws with a thumb. And some of the Chidawis have got horns on their heads. And what surprises me is this. Some film producers, like the producers who make the film Star Wars, often show creatures in their films which actually exist, which
I'm so glad he said that. I'm so glad he said that. Because I know that they're getting this shit somewhere. You know, here, let me tell you a little story. I was sitting with a shaman in Chicago, and we were watching episodes of Farscape. Y'all know that TV show Farscape? And he was looking at that show and he goes, you know, some of these people are not, it's not makeup. That's what he said. He goes, it's not makeup. That some of these people that we see in these sci-fi movies, he said it's not makeup, essentially. And I've never forgotten that, because now when I'm watching like sci-fi movies or sci-fi shows, I'm like, is that a real person? Is that a real being? Or is that makeup? And that's interesting, because I've kind of sensed that too, that some of these movies that we see, they're more like documentaries. And Swarm says Ben is out there. Ben Browder. Who? Ben Browder, he is a handsome man, let me tell you that.
even the most uneducated of Africans who knows this Chidawi can identify. For example, in the new Star Wars film, what is it called? Star Wars or something like that. There is a creature who amazes me called Darth Maul. Darth Maul.
Okay, so the documentary is dating itself now. This must have been the year 2000, because Star Wars The Phantom Menace came out in 1999. I believe it did. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I did go to the theater to see that movie, and it was really kind of bad. And I remember being in like the front row of that movie, and I was with a friend, and we were like looking at each other like, this is awful. Like, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And there were so many like bad parts of that movie that at one point we had to look back. Like, we were like looking back at the theater to see if other people were like having the same reaction that we were like, are y'all seeing this shit? So The Phantom Menace came out in 1999. So, but he's going to talk about Darth Maul.
Is a red and black being with a ring of small horns right round his head. That is exactly what the Chidawi look like. Some have got ordinary heads without any horns on their heads. These are the lesser Chidawi. But the royal Chidawi have got a ring of sharp horns all around their heads. And the very high Chidawi, like their king, Mubaba Samahongo, they have got very long horns which grow this way.
Ooh, that's interesting. Let's look up Darth Maul real quick. I want to show you. I looked it up on my phone. So, I mean, isn't it weird how sci-fi is? But this is what he's talking about. Let's see if we can get a bigger picture. How come I can't make these big without visiting these websites? There we go. There we go. So he's talking about the horns on that head. All right. Let's go back.
Not that way like a bull, but this way like certain antelopes. Now, I just wonder, where these film producers get their information from. And in one strange film, which my student called me to come and watch, there is the thing called Stargate 2. Mm-hmm. And in that film, there was a creature, a very slimy, cream-colored creature with heavy wrinkles on its face. It was a spitting likeness of Mubaba Samahongo, the terrible emperor of the Chidawi.
Well, clearly there's a tremendous amount of knowledge of what's been going on and what is going on, which comes out symbolically through films and areas of communication like Hollywood.
And I've long suspected that the sci-fi movies are kind of like a disclosure as well, that they're kind of preparing us for alien races and things of that nature. And like Star Trek, Star Wars, to me, Farscape seems so true to me. Like and when I've written stories about things, it's like, where do they come from? Really, that these stories have to come from somewhere. Being Namo, I know that Namo are all about stories and culture, creating culture, and so a lot of these sci-fi movies, I feel, are a way of preparing people for certain things. And I don't think it's all bad either. I don't think any of this shit is bad. It is just, it's a natural part of the evolution of consciousness.
The thing that I'm totally stunned the more I talk to you about this, is because I've been all over the world having people give me descriptions of seeing reptilian type figures, particularly people in positions of power in the world, changing into a reptilian figure and coming back again. And what they describe seeing is exactly what the knowledge of ancient Africa talks about seeing. We're talking about the same people there, which is an astonishing confirmation. And the eyes is something that keeps coming up being described. Tell me about the eyes of the Chidawi.
Say, a warrior Chidawi has got eyes like a snake. These eyes are yellowish with split pupils, and they glow in darkness. So if a warrior Chidawi, one of the lesser classes, is hiding in a cave, you can see its eyes burning. But a royal Chidawi has got 3 eyes. It's got the yellow eyes, which glow in a strange, almost ice-like way, like jewels, like certain types of yellow jewel. And then they have got an eye in the center of their forehead, an eye which doesn't close up down like a normal eye does, but which closes from side to side and which opens this way. Now this eye of the Chidawi is the eye that kills, because it can knock a man down just by the fire, the glare that comes out of it.
Is this where the constant recurring theme of the evil eye comes from?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, Mubaba, the emperor of the Chidawi, who is said to be still alive today, Mubaba has got a central eye. His other 2 eyes were stitched shut by a jealous wife. But his killing eye, the Samahongo, the terrible red eye, opens. He can even open it like this.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave it today. So what do you guys think? Do you want me to continue to watch the rest of this documentary? We got through the first hour. We could probably do an hour every Saturday over the next several Saturdays. I think that would be fun. So I want to say, some final thoughts here. And if you guys have any questions or comments, please take this opportunity to talk about them. Something that as old as these things can be, like imagine how old these things could be. The ones that brought this gift to humans, they could conceivably still be alive today. And I kind of might get the sense that they are, that they are alive today, that they're still around. And I don't get anything evil about it at all. I don't get anything evil, but at the same time, it's not like benevolent or good. I'm just getting the sense of it being natural. But also, I'm a shaman and I'm going to look at the world that way. Like it's just something it is a necessary part of human evolution. I'm also not in the victim mindset either. I've also done a huge amount of work on ego stuff and done a lot of shadow work as well. And that would influence anyone's perspective on this. Like it might be evil to somebody who thinks that they're gonna die, or that the universe means them harm, and that God doesn't love them, and that God doesn't want good things to happen for them and to them. So even though we've just barely gotten into this document, well, barely an hour, that's pretty long into this documentary, and he went over what these reptilians were, but I might change my opinion as I listen further. I was able to unlock a lot of things. So one of the things that was interesting to me was how the men and women having sex with each other and not really matching up. And what if that's where homosexuality came from? That, oh, well, in order to make men get along with each other, we'll make some of them gay or something like that. I mean, as a gay man, I'm fascinated as to why I'm gay. It's one of my bigger questions, as it would with anybody. Like, why am I gay? Why? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Evolutionary. There's no evolutionary sense for it. So being gay is kind of like, why? I mean, I've tried to change it. I can't change it, but there's got to be a spiritual or a reason for it. And then I think I'm unlocking a little bit more of that through watching this documentary and all of that. Well, with that said, I'd like to thank you all for joining me today for today's stream. I'm going to pick this up next Saturday. I definitely am. And if you want to watch the documentary without me, I won't be mad. I won't be upset. You can do that. The title of it is Credo. You can see it in the upper, in the screen. Credo, Mutwa, interviewed by David Icke, the Reptilian Agenda. So thank you all for joining me today. And I will see you on the next one. And also on Monday, there will be a new episode of the Shaman Patrick Show. So thank you all. Thank you all. I love you.